We've got some new members and we've got folks joining us this evening for presentations. So just really glad to have everyone with us. I'm going to start off by just asking if we've got any comments, and let's start with Melissa.
Oh, good evening. I mirror Shell in saying it's good to see everybody again. I realize we've been a little bumpy between making sure we stay safe through COVID surges and our delays with membership approval schedules. So we really appreciate your patience and your service more than you know. We have some good topics lined up the next several months. We'll start tonight with a special presentation with Kelly Snyder all the way from Novato. We really appreciate her taking her time to talk with us tonight. I would also like to introduce one of our new members, Lorna Hallowell. She has served as the Assistant Director of Education and Development in the Office of Equity and Diversity at UT since September of 2019. She holds an MS in Education from the University of Minnesota and a BS in Organizational Management from Oklahoma City University. She's currently pursuing her PhD in Higher Education Administration from UT and expects to graduate in 2026. She's interested in educational issues and minority issues and lives in Knoxville. So welcome, Lorna. We really appreciate you agreeing to take this opportunity.
Thank you, Melissa, everyone. I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'd like to talk a little bit about what our program has been doing lately. We've made great progress and there's lots to share since our last board meeting. Fortunately, Shelley and Sarah are doing a really good job of trying to pass information along and keep you updated. We're proud to announce that we met all of headquarters priorities for us in 2021, which included finishing the demolition of the biology complex, continuing land and property transfers at the East Tennessee Technology Park, and also we've awarded a new cleanup contractor that will take us through the next 10 years of cleanup. It was awarded to United Cleanup Oak Ridge. Their acronym just happens to be UCOR. Which was the same acronym of the last company we had working with us. This company is a team that's comprised of Amentum, Jacobs, and Honeywell. Headquarters just announced their priorities for us for 2022, and we have some new milestones that we'll be working towards. We'll be finishing soil work and transferring the biology complex footprint to NNSA and for their new planned facility at that location. And we'll be beginning process U-233 material in hot cells. As a quick catch up, we recently finished processing and disposing a subset of the uranium-233 inventory stored at ORNL. That was work that was being done in glove boxes. That has been one of our highest priorities at ORNL. We're now going to be moving to processing U-233 in hot cells. Our crews have been really busy deactivating and prepping numerous facilities for demolition at both Oak Ridge National Lab and Y-12 National Security Complex. In 2021, we conducted work in 20 buildings at ORNL and 7 buildings at Y-12. Our cleanup's well underway at those sites after we've completed the major cleanup at ETTP the year prior. One of our highest priority projects is a new on-site waste disposal facility known as the Environmental Management Disposal Facility. Many of y'all have seen some of our presentations that we've done. We're still in the regulatory approval process for that project. And when that moves forward a bit, we're planning a public meeting. And so that will hopefully be in the near future. Speaking of upcoming events, you all are invited to tune into an event that's scheduled for February 24th from 9:30 to 10:30. We'll be happy to share that link with you over the next week. It'll be a DOE and UCOR event with our new contractor that'll roll out our future vision for the East Tennessee Technology Park. It'll have a lot of interesting information and provide a promising look for developments and plans happening to benefit our community. I'm also excited to announce a very recent partnership. We had a press release that came out February 2nd with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, who are going to help us construct the K-25 viewing platform and wayside exhibits around the K-25 footprint. We signed a multi-project agreement with numerous organizations in 2012 for several efforts to preserve and share the site's history. So this project will help us complete our commitments from that agreement and provide the community with a great educational resource. The plans are to break ground this year and complete construction next year. So with that, I will turn it over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Melissa and Miss Connie. Anything from you today for the EPA?
Thank you. Yes, I do have two. First, some of you may know that EPA, the Atlanta office, Region 4, has a new regional administrator. That's Mr. Daniel Blackman. He comes to us with a lot of policy experience in dealing with EPA's programs, civic and community engagement activities. So we're very, very happy to have him on board. And the next announcement, I believe the SSAB received notification that you all have a new EPA liaison. So I am no longer the EPA liaison, and that person is Samantha Urquhart Foster. She's been participating in some of the meetings to see how things operate. So I'm officially no longer the EPA liaison, but Samantha will be taking over from now. And that's all that I have. And if anyone has questions, I or Samantha will be able to try to help answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Miss Connie, for the updates. And while I'm excited to welcome Samantha in your stead, we will be sorry to see you leave us, if you will. You've been a wonderful partner to us, and we really appreciate everything you've done toward partnership over the years.
Thank you.
How about you, Mr. Christoph? What do you have this evening?
Good evening. Welcome to new members. Also very appreciative, on the report from Melissa on the successes that UE and UCOR achieved to date. I do not have any announcements. I'm just happy that we're starting, having the regular meetings again.
Wonderful. Thank you, Christoph. Okay, with that, I think we are going to transition into our presentation this evening, which is on the Federal Advisory Committee. And for those of you that are not familiar with Kelly, Kelly is a designated federal officer for the EM Site-Specific Advisory Board and the EM Advisory Board. Prior to joining headquarters in 2020, she previously served as the Deputy Designated Federal Officer for the Nevada Site-Specific Advisory Board and Strategic Communications Manager for the EM Nevada program. During her 20 years of federal service, she has gained a diverse insight on many aspects of the EM program, but feels one of her greatest assets is bringing the field perspective to headquarters. Kelly earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, was born and raised in New Mexico, but has lived in Las Vegas, Nevada since 1997 and shares her home with her husband, 2 elementary age children, 3 dogs, and 5 pet snails. I think that might be the first time I've ever seen pet snails. So welcome, Kelly. And I would just echo your sentiment about your experience in the field. I do think that's such a wonderful asset to us on the committee, and we really appreciate you being a part of our discussion this evening. I'll hand things to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shell. It's so nice to be here virtually with you. I wish I could be there in person. I've been in your area several times and participated in your activities in the past during national chairs meetings. But hopefully we will be able to travel soon in person, and I will be able to come to a meeting there in person and see everyone. But tonight I was asked to give an overview of the Federal Advisory Committee Act, which is really the backbone behind all of our advisory boards. So if you wouldn't mind just clicking to the next slide, I would appreciate that. So I want to cover a variety of topics, all that relate to what we call Faka, the Federal Advisory Committee Act. So we're going to talk about how the SSAB was originally formed, where Faka fits in, the legal considerations related to Faka, DOE and member responsibilities, conflict of interest, and then answer any questions that you have. If you have questions along the way, I'm happy to take them then, or if you want to hold them till the end, it doesn't matter to me. Whatever you normally do in your meetings is fine with me. So if we could go to the next slide. So what is the Environmental Management Site-Specific Advisory Board? Well, wanted to give you a little bit of information that it was chartered in 1994 under the Federal Advisory Committee Act. And this was a way to involve local citizens more directly in DOE EM cleanup decisions. It is so important that we hear from community members who live near our sites and understand what their preference is, what they're interested in, and the opinions that they have on the work that we do. And so our advisory board is a key way for us to get that feedback and have open dialogue. Now on the map here, you can see that there are a variety of stars listed, and one of them obviously is there in Oak Ridge, but we also have 7 other local advisory boards that make up the EM site-specific advisory board. So there's only one charter for all 8 boards. And so your other boards are in Hanford, Idaho, Nevada, New Mexico, Paducah, Portsmouth, Savannah River, and who am I forgetting? Did I get everybody? I think I got everybody. I think I got counted up to 8. So our local boards operate throughout the year on their own individual schedules, but we do try and bring all of the boards together twice a year for our national chairs meeting. And that's where we give the opportunity for the boards to collaborate, see if they have commonalities in terms of recommendations that they would like to make, really help create a community environment that's larger just than the local communities, one that has a national perspective and makes national recommendations. Our members are made up of community representatives. We do not need experts on the board. Experts are welcome, but you do not have to have a technical background in order to participate on the advisory board. It's really important to us that our boards are diverse from a variety of viewpoints, including gender, ethnicity, point of view, education. We try and make sure our boards are very well-rounded and mirror the communities that they're in. We focus on stakeholder values. That is the key thing, is we want to hear what the community stakeholders feel about the program and recommendations that they have to improve it. This also gives us independent advice from the community and ensures that there is a relationship built on trust and transparency. Next slide. So the Federal Advisory Committee Act has been around for a very long time, and the purpose of it is to ensure that the committees and boards that fall within the Federal Advisory Committee Act are accessible to the public. We want to make sure that there is a formal process for establishing a board, operating it, overseeing it, and terminating advisory boards. So it's very important that this act is in place to give the entire structure a strong foundation. As part of Faka, it does create the committee management secretariat, and it does require that boards advise and recommend, not decide and implement. So the decision and the implementation part of the puzzle is handled by the department, as well as with Congress and their funding. But from the board's perspective, we're looking for advice and recommendations. There are a lot of benefits of Faka. It ensures that there's transparency and that the community has an opportunity to participate and be involved in the process. And it also lends credibility to the board's advice that there is a formal federal structure behind the board and how it operates. It helps ensure integrity as well as that trustworthiness that we want to make sure that we have. Next slide. So I always find this slide interesting. I won't go through each individual number here. But one of the numbers that's not listed that I find very interesting is the EM Site-Specific Advisory Board is made up of almost 200 members itself, and it's the largest advisory board within the Department of Energy. And I have heard some people say it's one of the largest in the federal government, but I'm not positive of that. But it is a very large board with almost 200 members between those 8 sites. And so that's one of the fun facts related to the advisory board. But you can see on this slide, there's a lot of other interesting numbers between the approximately 1,000 federal committees in existence with over 65,000 members, more than 7,000 meetings held each year. And this number did fall a little bit during COVID. It did take us some time to figure out how to do virtual meetings. And so there was a little blip in our tracking of how many meetings we've had. So you'll see a little bit of a dip in 2020 and 2021, but I think we're really on track now, and we have a good idea of how to conduct meetings in a hybrid setting or in a completely virtual setting. That's one of the things that we do try and do is learn from each other. And so I'm in contact with other Faka boards to find out how they're operating to make sure that we are sharing lessons learned and best practices. And so it's a really great network of people to help support each other to make sure that we remain accessible to the community even when we can't always be in person. Next slide. So there are a variety of key players that are involved with Faka. Obviously, I didn't list everybody here, but I just wanted to touch on the main players. So you have GSA Committee Management Secretariat, and that was the one that was identified right in the act itself. And then when you take it a step lower within the Department of Energy, we have a committee management office and a committee management officer who oversees all of the advisory boards that the Department of Energy has. And then each advisory board has a designated federal officer, and that's who I am. And I am responsible for all of the environmental management boards that we have. And so, like I mentioned in the beginning, we have one EMSSAB that's made up of 8 local boards. And then we have a headquarters advisory board that's called the Environmental Management Advisory Board. And that board provides recommendations directly to senior leadership at the headquarters level. But we need help. Obviously, as mentioned in my bio, I come from the field and I've only been at headquarters for a couple of years now. And so I know how important it is to have a strong team in the field, making sure that where the work is really being completed, that you have a team that's supporting the advisory board and making sure that everything is taking place that needs to take place and that the community has an opportunity to participate. And that's where your deputy designated federal officers come in. And so Melissa is your DDFO, and Dave Alder is also on the books when he's available. I understand that you guys tag team. And so each of the sites does have their own DDFO. And then you have your federal coordinators and your local board staff. And so those are the key players at the field level. But then we get to the most important part here, and that's the board members themselves. So we have a chair and a vice chair, and then we also have our voting members. As you all know, that there is an appointment process to become a member, and typically you are appointed for a 2-year term. Not all boards have liaisons, but I do want to point this out that each board can have non-voting liaisons who are representing an intergovernmental agency. So it's EPA, the local state, there might be other branches within the state government, tribal entities. That is a way to make sure that we have that intergovernmental perspective from other agencies outside of the Department of Energy, and that they are involved in board activities and have the opportunity to be a resource for the board, as well as ensure that their viewpoints are made available to the board, so that it's another resource to have a balanced perspective. So when recommendations come in, we're hearing it from a variety of people who have had the opportunity to get that information from multiple sources, because that's so important that, the information provided is well-rounded. Next slide. So there are some just basic legal requirements of Faka. So every committee has to have a charter outlining the committee's mission and the specific duties. Now, this is where I want to point out where the language gets a little confusing when it comes to Faka. Faka calls an advisory board a committee or a council. We refer to our advisory boards, as an advisory board. And when we say committee at the Department of Energy EM level, we're typically meaning a subcommittee within the advisory board. So I do want to point out right here, it's a little confusing, but I wanted to make sure to put the legal language in here since I'm talking about the legal requirements. So the committee, also known as advisory board, has to have a charter that shows their mission and their specific duties. It also requires that meetings are open and available to the public. And so we have to make sure that our meetings take place and are in a public setting so that anybody who wants to participate can participate. And so we have to announce our meetings in the Federal Register. That is the legal requirement for how we advertise that a meeting is taking place. I do want to point out though, that most sites do more than just put the Federal Register out. Some sites use social media, some will place an ad in the local newspaper, put posters up in community locations like libraries, but the legal requirement is a Federal Register notice. And that Federal Register notice is required when there is going to be a full board meeting. So if your board is having a committee meeting or a subcommittee meeting, whichever jargon you use, you do not have to list it in the Federal Register, but it's still open to the public, but it does not have the legal requirement of being in the Federal Register. The other part is we have to make sure that the documents associated with the advisory board are maintained and are available to the public. One thing that's really interesting is the advisory board's records will end up in the National Archives when the board completes its mission, or if the mission is ongoing, sites can start submitting their paperwork, the documentation to the National Archives in pieces. And I know some of our boards have done that, but not all, and it's up to the site's determination. But the work that you're doing is going to end up in the National Archives, which I think is pretty exciting. I'm kind of into things like that though. So going back to those legal requirements, we have to maintain a fairly balanced membership, and that's the legal requirement in Faka. But we go above and beyond that. We think it's very important that our community advisory boards mimic and mirror the communities that we are in. And so I know that Melissa had discussed in the beginning of the meeting, it had taken more time than we had wanted to get the board's latest appointments through. And one of the reasons for that is we have to make sure that the board looks like the community it's from. And so we make sure that we are looking at the demographics, and I explained what we looked at earlier. And so fairly balanced, we really take that seriously, and we also ensure that we're following the current administration's expectations. There was an executive order that came out in June that specifically addressed ensuring that advisory boards are diverse and inclusive. And so that's another key factor in one of the reasons we put more emphasis on balancing our board rather than just fairly balanced. That's the minimum in Faka. We really try and go above and beyond that. And then we have to make sure that we have a public comment period at all of our open meetings, at any advisory board meeting. We want to make sure that there's an opportunity for the public to voice their opinion and concerns, and hopefully kudos of what they're experiencing in their community. So those are the basic legal requirements. And because it's an act, a federal act, I often get the question, well, what happens if we violate Faka? And so if you could go to the next slide. So here's the consequences of a Faka violation. The good news, there is no Faka jail. There are no criminal penalties, no civil or penalties. So that is a good thing. I try and make sure I abide completely by Faka, but it is very good to know that I'm not going to end up in some Faka jail if something goes awry. The bad news though, if you violate Faka, more than likely there's going to be litigation, and we all know that that is a time-consuming process, and it does have impacts. Meetings could be prohibited. The advice that the board came up with during a Faka meeting that was not in compliance with Faka could be prohibited. We may not legally be able to use the advice because it was not obtained following Faka. And then it just undermines the credibility of our program if we're not following the main foundation of our boards. That is just going to erode credibility and trust. And so even though there are not criminal or civil or monetary penalties, there are definitely penalties that impact both the department and the board. And so we want to make sure that we're always in line with Faka. Next slide. So I've been talking a lot about Faka, and you can see here on this pyramid, it is at the top. But I want to go through a couple of the other things that guide our boards, just so you understand when you're doing board activities and Shelley or Melissa or one of the other team members, brings up something related to the charter or your operating procedures. This will just give you an idea of how everything works together. So we have Faka at the top, and underneath that is the DOE Committee Management Manual. And that management manual is for all Faka committees that are within the Department of Energy. And then underneath that, we have that EMSSAB charter. Now that charter is renewed every 2 years. Like I mentioned originally, we were formed in 1994. And so our charter is up for renewal this year. We expire on April 10th of 2022. And so I'm in the process now of ensuring that our charter is renewed. During the charter renewal, that's our opportunity to tweak any language that we need to tweak in it. If there's anything that we are no longer doing, we can pull that out of the charter, or if there's new activities that we want to include in future boards, then that's where our opportunity to add it into the charter. The charter renewal process follows the membership appointment process. And so those that have been on the board for a while know that that's an extensive process, but we are working very hard to make sure that that charter is renewed on time. And typically it is a seamless transition, and you will get a copy of the charter once it's renewed. So underneath that charter, we have the EMSSAB policies and procedures. And that document is really for the staff that supports the advisory boards. That's kind of your desktop procedure. You go and you can look, and it's going to tell you, how to submit a membership package, or what are the requirements for the Ddfo or the Ddfo. And all of these things are in line with the previous document. So we have to make sure that there's nothing within our policies and procedures that conflicts with the committee management manual or the charter or Faka. And then after we get one step lower, we go to the operating procedures. Some boards call them operating procedures, some call bylaws. And that's the local operating guidelines for your board. Those are the specifics for how are you going to elect a chair and vice chair? How are you going to handle the meeting requirements and your voting procedures? Because each board does it a little differently. Local operating procedures are the responsibility of the site office for your board. And most of the boards work with their members when they originally develop the operating procedures and when revisions are taking place. And so this is where I wanted to step in and let you know that I know that the board staff have worked very hard to update the operating procedures. And this is one of the things that needs general counsel's approval as well as my approval. And so the operating procedures had been submitted by your Oak Ridge staff and sent up to headquarters. We got comments from legal, and Oak Ridge has responded to them. And now I'm still trying to get them finalized. And here's the hiccup why. We are updating the policies and procedures and that charter. And I have to make sure all three of those agree with each other. And so there's a couple of things that we're working on the policies and procedures side that will ultimately impact the local bylaws. So I'm kind of in that, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It's like, okay, if we say the bylaws are ready to go, then we may have to go back and revise the policy and procedure or vice versa. And so I do want to take ownership of the fact that the Oak Ridge staff have worked very hard to get those updated, and it is sitting with me in my office, and I take full accountability that those have not been completed yet, but there is a reason why. I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks, no later than March, to get those back to you. I should have the policies and procedures nailed in by then. And so just a quick update on your operating procedures. Next slide. So talking about the charter, in the charter, it specifically tells people what the board can and cannot work on. And so essentially, we have the main topics that are very common at most of the EM sites. Not all sites have all of these bullets that are listed here, but it is included in the charter so that we have a guiding principle for what the advisory boards are focusing on and what they are supposed to be providing advice and recommendations on. Now, if there is a topic that is at your site that is not listed here, that does not mean that you can't provide recommendations on it, because the charter does say that it is within any issue within the environmental management scope. And so this list is just a hot topic item more than some of the details that each site might have that's only unique to their site. But it is important that all of the advice and recommendations that are made and deliberated on by the board have to be environmental management specific issues. The board cannot weigh in on non-EM issues. That's one of those things that it's imperative that we follow that guidance, that we have to stay within the environmental management lane. Next slide. So DOE has a lot of responsibilities within Faka. And so most of these are listed as responsibilities for the Ddfo, which again, that is me. However, because we have local boards and this is not a headquarters board, these are also the responsibilities that are taken on by the Ddfo, your deputy designated federal officer. So we have to ensure that we are compliant with Faka regulations, guidance, and all of the other policies associated with the boards. Your Ddfo has to approve the agenda for each board meeting, call, attend, and adjourn each board meeting, and this does include subcommittee meetings. There are times where the Ddfo is not available and we don't want to stop progress for a board meeting, so we can list an alternate Ddfo as long as they're trained in Faka to cover those meetings. So we want to make sure that we have a backup plan. We have to maintain the required committee records. We have to prepare the Federal Register notices, and those are the advertisements that I had mentioned earlier that are in the Federal Register. We have to prepare an annual report that goes to that committee management office, summarizing the board activities for each year. The Ddfo is responsible for nominating members for appointment, ensuring all ethical standards are met by board members, and ensuring that the meetings are held at a reasonable time, place, and accessible to the public. We don't want a Faka meeting happening at 2 in the morning in a back alley. That's not going to work. We want to make sure that it's in a public location or in a location that's accessible by the public. I know some boards do have meetings on DOE site property, and they may have to go through security to get to the location, but as long as that is an option and it is open to the public, even if they do have to follow procedures to get on, that's acceptable. Next slide, please. So like DOE, the members also have their responsibilities. It's important that members attend regular meetings to learn about the cleanup process. I'm sure those that have been on the board for several years understand how important it is to come to meetings, because our projects last a long time. And if you miss several meetings, it's easy to not feel like you're up to speed on what's taking place, just because these projects do go on for so long and the updates are really important. It's also so important that you attend meetings because we operate with a quorum. If we want to make a recommendation and make decisions, we have to have a quorum present. And so your participation is so important for so many reasons. You provide recommendations to the department. You can provide recommendations both at the site level and at the headquarters level. We do ask, though, that if you are going to make a recommendation, to start at the site level, just to make sure everybody is involved. And that way something doesn't go straight to headquarters without your local officials being aware and having an opportunity to assist in any resource management that you need. We ask that you work together and you respectfully work with your board members. We purposely put members on this board that do not have the same opinion. It's so important that we are well-rounded, and it's important that we respect each other's opinions and work professionally. I know sometimes that can be difficult when people have strong opinions, but we want to make sure that the integrity of the board remains. We have to avoid techniques that would be considered bargaining, or I will vote for this if you vote for that, or you don't want to be in a situation where somebody just does not feel comfortable speaking up, and so they do not give their opinion just because they want to avoid an uncomfortable situation or a conflict, or they just want to reach agreement and move on. It's really important that that you feel comfortable speaking your opinion and making sure your viewpoint is heard by the entire board, because everybody has a perspective that they're coming from, and we can learn from each other. And so this is definitely an important one. Please feel comfortable raising your opinion, even if it is in the minority, because we can all learn from each other, and it's important that we do this in a group setting. We also do not respond to public comments when they are given. And what I mean by that is often public comments can cover whatever topic they want. It doesn't even have to be about environmental management. Or there might be an opportunity where somebody who makes a public comment is interested in essentially, poking the bear, stirring the pot, whatever you want to say. And that's not the purpose of public comment. The purpose is to get their opinion out, and so that we can hear their perspectives and hear whatever they have to say. But it's important that we continue on track with whatever the meeting agenda is. I'm not saying that you shouldn't respond if it is in line with what's on your agenda. For instance, you may have a situation where, Joe Blow makes a comment that he supports a certain waste landfill, and that he thinks that the monitoring period for it should be 10 years. If that's on your agenda and later in the meeting, it's appropriate for you to say, the public member that spoke earlier said this, and I agree with him, that makes sense. But we don't want you to feel like you're in a situation where you have to respond to public comment, especially if it's outside of the scope of the meeting. You're not allowed to use your title or represent the board outside of the meeting. You cannot use your board membership for personal gain. We need to know, and when I say we, it would be, you need to talk to Melissa and let her know if any outside entity is attempting to influence your decisions. You are appointed to the board as an individual, and it's important that we are getting you and your community's perspective, not being influenced by somebody else to make a certain recommendation or to vote a certain way. So we also want to make sure that we stick on the board's mission and stick to that focus. Like I mentioned earlier, the charter outlines what we can discuss and what we want advice and recommendations on. And we want to make sure that we are all working together to make those recommendations. And so that's one of the main reasons why each of the boards has a work plan that they update each year. So everybody has the same blueprint as to what we're working on and the time frame and the projection for when those recommendations would be. And then the last bullet here talks about notifying the Ddfo of any potential or perceived conflict of interest. And that does go somewhat with what I mentioned earlier about any outside people trying to influence your decision. If you could go to the next slide, I'll talk a little bit more about conflict of interest. So as you know, you are not a federal employee when you are appointed to the advisory board, but you do have to follow federal ethic regulations as if you were a federal employee or a special government employee. And so I wanted to hit on 3 topics here. I'm sorry, I've said that backwards. You're not, okay, take a step back. I have 2 different boards. One has special government employees, and then we have the SSAB, and I always get this backwards. Okay, so let me repeat this again. So you're not subject to the same federal ethics regulations, but there are 3 areas where we need to make sure that you understand what you can and cannot do and how that relates to conflict of interest. So the first one is you have to refrain from any use of your membership which gives the appearance that you're motivated by the private desire for private, professional, or financial gain. And what that means is you're using your membership for something other than providing recommendations and advice to the department. That is the sole purpose for your membership, and you cannot use it for other intentions. You need to recuse yourself from decisions and discussions related to real or perceived conflict of interest. You have to act impartially and avoid the appearance of impropriety. Now, this is the important part in this sentence is real or perceived. Even if you do not think that you have an actual conflict of interest, but it could be perceived that you do, you need to discuss that with your Ddfo. You need to talk to Melissa, and if necessary, I can get involved and we can look to see if there's an actual conflict of interest. And that goes into the 3rd bullet here. You need to just seek that guidance. I do want to point out, if you do have a conflict of interest, you can still be on the board. We can come up with a recusal plan that will allow you to participate in board activities and then to recuse yourself from those activities that are considered a conflict of interest. And lastly, also part of that 3rd bullet, you have to notify Melissa as well if you are offered anything of value for your advisory board service. So gifts, gratuities, loan, or favors, or anything of that nature. You do need to notify Melissa that that has happened and that you have been approached. Next. So this is my contact information. Like was mentioned earlier, when I was introduced, I am in Nevada. So if you contact me, I'm in the Pacific time zone. That does throw some people off. So I just wanted to point out I am available, but if I don't answer, there's probably a good chance it's really early in the morning here. But I do try and be available during the week and make sure that if you have any questions that I respond to you quickly. So questions, what have I confused you on, or what do you have questions on?
Thank you, Kelly. And I'd like to just open this up to our board members first. I'm not sure if we have any guests on the call today, but if we have any board members that have questions, if you'd kindly use the little raised hand feature down there, we'd so appreciate it. Any questions from the board? Not seeing any hands. Any other questions from anyone else that may be attending? Okay. All right then. Well, thank you, Miss Kelly, for the presentation. We really appreciate all of the great information that you shared today, and certainly your partnership as well.
Absolutely, of course. And Shelley had asked me to cover one other thing. Is this when you want me to cover that, Shelley, or should I, is it during a different part of the meeting?
I think we were planning on you being our first speaker at the board business portion of the meeting, which probably won't be too terribly long from now. So
okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so Shelley, did we have anyone that submitted any public comments for today? I wonder if we lost Miss Shelley. Sarah, are you aware if we had any public comment requests for today?
None that I am aware.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we'll get Miss Shelley back and we can.
Sorry, I'm not sure why my mute wasn't working. Yeah, we didn't have any, but we will continue to take comments if anyone has them through Monday, and they will be included in the official record that will be posted of the meeting.
All right. Thank you, Miss Shelley. All right. Any requests for new action items for the agenda today? Okay. And can I get a motion to approve the agenda for today?
So move.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Shelley, do you want to do raise hands or? Do we have anyone who is opposed to the agenda today, to the motion on the floor? A verbal or a raise hand? Okay, so moved. Our next meeting will be March the 9th, and the topic is going to be budget development and prioritization. And our issue group for that topic is Malone, Sharp, Shields, and Tuck. So please make sure you take a look at the work plan if you have some interest in this topic or any other topic that's on the work plan and want to be a part of those discussions. This ends the presentation portion of the meeting, and we'll move on to board business. Anyone who is attending who does not want to stick around for the board business, you're welcome to depart. Thanks for attending. So let's kick off tonight just discussing at a high level the headquarters charge on diversity and public participation. So Miss Kelly can share her last piece with us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Shell. I have been asked to ask each of the local advisory boards that make up the EMSSAB on behalf of Todd Schrader, the Deputy Assistant Secretary. He is interested in each of the boards providing, and I'm going to pull up my language here to make sure I get this correct, asking the board for ways the board and the site could improve diversity related to membership applications and public participation during SSAB meetings. In particular, he'd like you to consider your community's demographics and look at when you're having your meetings and where you're having your meetings, and seeing if those are set up in the best way possible to ensure the community can participate.
Any question for Shelley? I'm sorry, for Kelly. Kelly and Shelley, those are so close. We have so many. Okay. All right. Thank you, Miss Kelly.
Absolutely.
All right. So our next topic tonight is the chair's recommendation on the member appointment process. And there is a document in your deck that actually speaks to the actual charge that we put forward, but a little bit of background on this. So, we've made a recommendation to revise the actual appointment process. And as some of you are acutely aware, but most all of us are aware, we run into issues with board package approvals. They have to go all the way up the chain to the White House, I believe, actually, before those can be approved. And so at times we have individuals who may expire their appointment and may be left in a position where they're a bit in limbo. They can't really support the board, but they're also sort of kind of just hanging out there waiting on the next approval. And so this recommendation has really been designed to help us address that challenge. And it really substantially impacts the boards when we can't have a quorum to do business and don't have the opportunity to, get out and support the stakeholder community in the way that we should as well, just due to the fact that we don't have the members that we need to do that. So really what this is designed to do is just looking at, we're asking respectfully for the process to be reviewed for anything that would be considered a reasonable activity to keep us from lapsing those memberships. And what we mean by that is a membership that's held by a member in good standing, whose term has expired, but has not yet reached the 6-year term limit. And we're asking for the site manager to be empowered to temporarily extend the terms of lapsed members in good standing, or to temporarily appoint other qualified members to replace lapsed members until a new package is approved. And we're asking DOE to publish the review and appointment process and then take feedback from the SSABs and the members and the public as well. With identified information being shared relative to the elements that are required, the General Service Administration, the EMSSAB Charter, etc. So this is in your packet. And I just want to open it up for any questions that anyone might have about this recommendation that we've put forward. Any questions at all?
Jill, this is Harriet McCurdy, and I was well aware of some of the problems during the COVID business. But I was just curious if this is something that started with the COVID business, or if this has historically been a problem for the boards over the past 20 some odd years.
Yeah, so my perspective is that this has been a challenge, although certainly COVID has exacerbated the challenge. I don't know, Melissa, if there's more that you can share, perhaps.
Yeah, COVID really caused some major issues, but we're looking at we're also, whenever you have a change of administration, different administrations require different things. So we're looking at it for a broader viewpoint that should help us in the future have some alternatives in case we get a delay in a package.
Kind of like treading water. Sounds good to me. Sounds like a good recommendation.
Thanks for that. Any other questions or comments? Okay. All right. So I'm going to hand things over to Miss Shelley Kimmel for election of officers, and this will be officers to take office March the 20th.
Well, hold on, Shell, can we vote on this chair's recommendation?
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes. I didn't realize we had to vote on it. So
yeah, it's
sort of
we
like
would sign on. Yeah.
Madam
Each
Chair,
board will vote.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor, can you please raise your electronic hands? Shelley, you let me know when you have your tally.
I see 9 hands. I'm not sure that all of our members have voted. So, okay, we've got 10. That would definitely be the quorum. And then if you can put down your hands, and then I will count anybody who is opposed to this.
Raise your hand.
Seeing no opposition, that would pass, and we can send that to headquarters.
So moved. Thank you, Miss Shelley. I apologize for the confusion.
No
All right,
worries.
now we'll hand things over to Shelley.
As you know, we do vote on officers annually, and you do have an item in your packet that covers this. There were, I am cutting out for some reason. I apologize. I just turned my phone on. The item in your packet that covers the election, there was a change since Friday when that was sent out. The chair remains the same. Vice chair and secretary had changed. Miss Amy Jones continues to run for vice chair. Michelle Lohman has decided to run for secretary. And so I want you to be aware of that difference between what's on my screen here and what's in your packets. So if anyone would like to put themselves forward for any of those positions, they are allowed to do so from the floor. But these 3 individuals were those who indicated their interest in the positions prior to. And so if anyone has interest in those positions, if you could speak now and we'll add you to the roster. And I am not seeing any hands. You can also do chat or any other communication method we've previously discussed. But if no one wants to step forward, then it is possible that we could approve the slate all at one time, as we have done in the past. But we would need to motion for that.
This is Tom Tuck, so moved.
Okay, and a second? Again, this is to motion to approve the slate entirely. Okay. Okay, and then so all in favor of approving these 3 individuals to these positions, please use the raise hand feature and hold it while I get a count, please. Okay, I am seeing 11 in favor. And if you could then put your hands down. And anyone who is opposed to appointing this slate of candidates. Seeing no opposition, these will be our new chair, vice chair, and secretary. Congratulations to them, and you will be receiving invites to the executive committee in March.
All right. Thanks, Miss Shelley. Moving on and board business, let's take a look at the June 2021. My goodness, I can't believe that's the meeting notes that we're going to be approving today. June 2021 meeting notes. And I don't see Bonnie on today. So everyone should have these in your packet. Can I get a motion to approve the notes, or any questions I should say before we make a note, make a motion?
Madam Chair, I think they're accurate with that meeting. I'd make a motion to approve.
Wonderful.
I'll
All
second the motion.
right, all in favor? Raise your hand. Shelley, let me know when you're ready.
Okay, we have 11 in favor.
And just lower hands, please. And anyone opposed, raise your hand.
I see no opposition.
Wonderful. All right, so moved. Next on our topics. So Miss Melissa is going to share with us an introduction of the 2022 work plan and issue groups.
First of all, I want to congratulate our new officers. This will be great having y'all going forward in our March meeting. We don't have any current recommendations that are awaiting a DOE response. So I'll move into the introduction of our work plan. Shelley, are you going to bring that up? It's in your package. It's the multicolored schedule that you'll see in there. What we've done is we have since we were not able to do an annual planning meeting this year, we went back and looked at the topics that we needed to make sure that we covered this year, mainly being the budget in March, which we do ask for a recommendation on the budget each year. You'll see that in April, we are not having a meeting just because that is when the EM chairs meeting will be happening. And so we didn't want to have any conflict with that. May we'll talk about EMDF, the Environmental Management Disposal Facility, and then we'll cover groundwater in June. With EMDF, there is likely to be a public meeting sometime in the next several months. So that will also be just an additional thing that we ask you to weigh in on at that time, but that's been yet to be determined. And then hopefully we will move into August to be able to kind of go back into our normal schedule to where we have an annual planning meeting to plan the work plan for next year. You'll see on the work plan, we have a place for issue groups. We ask that each member sign up for at least one issue group. Now, it does not prohibit you to sign up for every one of them or multiples. That is your choice, but we do ask each of you to pick one of the issue groups to be involved with. The issue groups, what will happen as a new member who may not understand this, when you're on an issue group, after we've given a presentation, the issue group will have some correspondence back and forth via email discussing the particular topic, and if they see the need to make a recommendation on that particular topic, if they determine that they do want to make a recommendation, they will then work together with the issue group to come up with what they want that recommendation to be, and then they will present that recommendation will be drafted by the issue group and with the help of our SSAB support staff. And then that would then come to the board to be voted on to move forward to go to DOE if it's approved. But anyway, I just wanted to let you have a chance to look at the new work plan. And if you could let Shelley and Sarah know over the next week which issue group you'd like to be a part of, we'd appreciate you sending an email. Shelley, is there anything else I need to bring up for that portion, the issue groups?
There is a list along with the work plan, and I don't know how well you can see this on my screen, but we have noted anyone who signed up for an issue group last year, we have carried that forward. But some of our newer members may not have signed up. So those have been highlighted. And the first issue that we'll have is the budget. And we know that there will be a recommendation on that. So just because we already have those 4 individuals on that issue group that Shell mentioned earlier, does not mean it's full. You are welcome to join that one as well. So just shoot me or Sarah an email. The main ORSOB email works as well. And if you have any questions, we can answer those too.
This is Tom Tuck. If we're already on an issue group and believe it's appropriate and we just stay that way, do we still need to send a follow-up email to you?
No, if you're happy with what's on there, then that's fine. But if you, for example, if you signed up for something last year and we carried it forward, you don't want that, then I do need to know. But otherwise, what we have in this list is what we will assume going forward unless we hear from you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Miss Shelley and Miss Melissa.
Well, one other thing I would like to bring up that's not on the listed here, I just wanted to remind all the members, in case you don't know, we're in the middle of kind of our recruitment for new members. We are accepting applications till the end of February. So I bring this up because if you know of any good candidates that you would like to put forth their name and contact information, we can reach out to them. Or if you can forward information to a candidate and say, we're now taking new member packages, we would appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, Miss Melissa. Okay, next up, committee reports. So the executive committee last week met to talk through our agenda for today and specifically have some dialogue on the HQ charge relative to the recommendation on the the member appointment process. And we were joined by Miss Lorna Hallowell, so we were so very glad to have her with us at the meeting. And then we also had some discussion just about, planning for the year work plan, which we reviewed, how to think about member recruitment, which of course, as you guys know, is super important. We really need to make sure that we're doing everything that we can as members to try to encourage others to join us in this work in support of our community. And so with that, I'm going to hand things over to Miss Amy Jones for the EM stewardship update, if she has one.
I really don't have an update. We will not have a meeting this month. We will start our meetings back next month, which will be March 23rd, and those will be virtual.
Amy, also, just a note, we will be electing the chair and the vice chair of the stewardship committee, which is separate from the officers that we elected tonight.
That is correct. And it would, you do need volunteers for that, correct? I mean, they can do it from the floor, but it would be nice if we had those names in advance. So if you're interested in chair or vice chair of the stewardship committee, please get your names to Shelley on that.
All right. Thank you, Miss Amy. Do we have any additional items to add to the agenda today? Anything that's come up since we've started our conversation that we want to potentially discuss? Okay. We ready to adjourn? I'm going to take silence as a yes. Thank you, everyone.
Hold up. We do have one hand. John.
Okay.
I was just voting on adjourning.
Appreciate that, John. All right. Thanks, everybody. Y'all have a great night, and we will see you in March.
Thank you. Have a
Bye,
good
y'all.
night.